much of your positive turn, I have to ask this because this is what people are wondering, has to do with the fact you need aid for your state?
Yeah, I want to continue to respect the office of the presidency, to respect his authority. Calling me a clown, the worst governor.
He recently called you NewSCUM. Did he say it in the Oval Office yesterday?
Yeah, we had some fun with that.
So it sounds like publicly you guys kind of trade barbs, and then privately you can joke about it, is what it sounds like.
And it's and it's a joke and it's not.
Gavin Newsom humiliates himself as he goes on CNN and begs Trump to save his failed state and his political career. He also accidentally confirms what we've all been fearing, that his true plans are to rebuild California into some Orwellian nightmare. As always, like the video and subscribe to the channel, but I want to start with Gavin begging that Trump doesn't hold him or any other failed politician in California accountable, and that conditions aren't put on the aid from the federal government so California can keep on just trucking along.
President Trump and House Speaker Mike Johnson suggested that conditions should be attached to any wildfire aid for California, with Johnson claiming state and local leaders were derelict in their duties. Was that discussed during your meetings, and where does that stand, if so, with getting aid in exchange for conditions being met?
It wasn't discussed, and I hope we can move beyond that. Look, I understand the foundational conditions. I think that exists with most things that Congress does in the relationship between states. The states' relationships with cities, there's conditions attached. But some of the conditions that were being bandied about just seem to be, for me, a little bit of noise, a little bit political. At the end of the day, we're all in this together. The president was at a prayer breakfast this morning. I remember Father Cause telling me, we're many parts, but one body. When one part suffers, we all suffer. This notion that we're all in this together. We're in there to take care of the folks in Louisiana, in the Speaker's District. We're here for the folks in North Carolina, Californians, that is, Georgia. People have been impacted by disasters and emergency, and the American spirit is to lend a hand and provide that support, and I expect that will happen for California.
Yes, the federal government obviously has an obligation to help rebuild Los Angeles. I mean, it's an American city. But it's not unreasonable to require that the same incompetence that allowed it to happen in the first place is fixed. California politicians are the most corrupt, and Gavin Newsom is basically saying, how dare you tell us to focus on things that actually matter and not line our own pockets? Why else do you think we became politicians? And did you hear what he said at the beginning? No conditions were discussed. Well, the reporter follows up and asks him, so Trump didn't mention any of his requests? And Gavin Newsom's forced to admit, yeah, he just lied to our faces. He did discuss them.
As you know, that President Trump has pressed for California requiring voter ID and changing to the water system. Did that come up with your meeting with him?
We talked about both, yeah.
You talked about both? And did you say you would?
We've been in an ongoing conversation for over, I feel like I told the president when he was on the tarmac last week in Los Angeles, I said, we're picking up on the last conversation we had around water 4.5 years prior. So I will say this, he's very focused on that issue. He certainly targeted some of that in terms of some of the actions he took by executive order.
2 billion gallons of water.
And so we had and that's why it was an extended conversation. I didn't even know people knew how long the conversation was, but it was an extended conversation. And so it was spirited. And look, and it's exactly.
Spirited how so? Bring us into that.
Because we were just, it was an engaging conversation. You know what it was? It was a two-way conversation. And that's what it should be. I mean, just different points of view, expressing a different understanding of the nuances on the ground, but an appreciation to get something done.
I mean, this guy is such a liar. He's such a grifter. Everything he said related to this fire was quite literally a lie. Gavin Newsom went through like the worst press I've ever seen a politician go through for a month straight. It's like he snarkily implies that Trump mentioning water is somehow a silly thing to talk about, an ineffective solution, and kept lying over and over. There's no spigot that turns off the water or turns on the water, only to find out that there was a spigot and Trump turned it and 2 billion gallons flowed through California. And then their next argument was, well, all the water reservoirs are already full, and leaving out the fact that 10 years ago, California raised $12 billion to build 7 new water reservoirs, none of which are under construction. So if you combine building 7 new reservoirs with letting 2 billion gallons of water flow, you create a situation in which more water would have been available to stop these fires. It's like Trump's talking about basic common sense solutions, and Gavin Newsom's just playing it off like it has no merit. Now, this is where Gavin Newsom totally emasculates himself, begs for Donald Trump's help, and admits to the public that Trump called him NewSCUM to his face when they met. Watch.
Your relationship with Trump certainly has been interesting over the years. It seems to have taken a more positive turn lately. I mean, he recently called you NewSCUM.
And not just recently.
Not,
He's been doing that for years.
Did he say it in the Oval Office yesterday?
Yeah, we had some fun with that. Look.
Okay. So tell us about this. How much of your positive turn, I have to ask this because this is what people are wondering, has to do with the fact you need aid for your state.
Yeah, but it's not even that. We had this relationship. I will say, one of the more, I'll leave it to more objective minds, but it's one of the more interesting relationships in politics because we had this relationship going back during COVID. I mean, we were involved in 100 lawsuits going back and forth. I mean, you could look at the tweets back then, calling me a clown, the worst governor, and yet we were still working together. And all that was a little bit of noise. So it just feels so familiar. And in that respect, I want to continue to respect the office of the presidency, to respect his authority, and to also engage in a constructive dialogue when it comes to issues of emergencies.
Did he call you NewSCUM in the Oval Office? Well, we had some fun. No, Trump had some fun at your expense. I bet you didn't call him a dictator. I bet you didn't call him a threat to democracy. I bet you called him Mr. President and he called you Gavin Newsom, and then goes on to say, I respect his authority. Yeah, I bet you do. It's like they make such a big deal that conditions are being applied to the foreign aid, but don't talk about the conditions. Why is not having voter ID such a non-negotiable for you? Why is not having a robust water management system when your state is prone to wildfires such a non-negotiable for you? These are two very sensible, common sense requests. But these people are so corrupt, so power hungry, that they're not willing to let that go in order to save their state. And that's why I'll say it again, California is going to go red next election because these people can clearly see that their politicians do not have their interests in heart. A $200 billion high-speed rail to nowhere and $23 billion a year on benefits for illegal immigrants. Under any other common sense government would have been used to revolutionize the water system in Los Angeles to prevent a fire from occurring like the one that occurred. Now, this is where he gets into the dark Orwellian part of all of it, where he admits what we've all been thinking, that he's not going to allow these people to rebuild their homes. Instead, they're going to replace them with a bunch of rented, affordable housing apartment complexes. Watch.
You previously mentioned the timeline for rebuilding would be 6 to 9 months. Is that going to happen? And should people rebuild in some parts of California, given how high the fire risk is?
Yeah, you can't rebuild the same. So we have to rebuild with science. We have to build with climate reality in mind. We have to look at infrastructure, redundancy, systems, ingress, egress as it relates to emergency management and planning, materials. All of that is being reviewed and reconsidered, and with the latest iterations in terms of understanding and technology. And I say technology in the context of how, again, we build the infrastructure to keep it safe, to address undergrounding of lines, how we address the larger issues of redundancy in terms of systems. But more important than anything else is the need to get the debris removed. 30 days to do the hazardous waste. We want to get 6 to 9 months, the rest of the debris done. Concurrently, people are getting permits. So this is all happening, rolling together, and we want to see construction very shortly. And in the next few years, we want to see hundreds, thousands of homes rebuilt.
Regular people can't wait years to finally move back into their home. So all these people are going to move somewhere else. They're going to sell their property. And the only people who can deal with the added red tape that Gavin Newsom's talking about are these large-scale property developers. And California real estate is expensive, so they're going to try to maximize the amount of profit that they can make per parcel of land. Not only can people not wait years to finally move back into their homes, but California is already the most complicated and difficult state to build in. And now Gavin Newsom's talking about adding extra regulations and red tape on top of that. The only people who can even comply with this level of regulation is these massive developers. California is exposing what we've already known. They're a bunch of communists. They're against private property. The politicians want their friends, who are obviously giving them a percentage of these developments, to be the ones that own these massive apartment complexes where people rent. They've already put out their plan for Los Angeles 2.0, where they have these 15-minute cities where nobody owns cars, nobody owns houses, everything is controlled and monitored by technology. It's one step away from the government being able to cut off your daily food rations because they disagree with what you said on social media. And if you thought that was dark, it gets even worse. He reveals what we've all known about the climate change agenda, that if the government can declare some existential crisis, it gives them the ability to seize more power and more control and change the entire way we live. Watch.
But I think there's a big question about how do some Californians do that, right? You have State Farm announcing that it has an average 22% interim rate hike for homeowners. The fair insurance plan for the state is just bogged down right now. Your dad, I believe, is on that plan, if I recall.
I have to hop in real quick. When she asked him about his dad being on the fair plan, which is the state-funded plan, he was like, oh, right, yeah, I did say that. Because he's a liar. He said it just to sound relatable, but he's a liar. Let's get back into it.
The larger issue of the insurance market, not unique to California by any stretch of the imagination, what's happening with insurance. And this is the reality, the new reality of extremes, extreme heat, extreme drought. You have droughts and rain bombs. You have flooding at the same time you're dealing with droughts, all happening concurrently. There's a new reality, the world we're living in. And if you're not believing science, you have to believe your own eyes, your own lived experience. And the reality is the insurance market understands it better than anyone else. The market and Mother Nature's are going to have to change the way we live and do business in the context of how we plan, how we do land use, zoning into the future along the lines of your question. We have to wake up to this reality. We cannot be in denial about what's going on with Mother Nature, again, around the globe, not just in the state of California.
But just to sort of pin you down, what does that mean for the rebuilding in some of these high-risk areas?
Just more sophisticated design and planning. Remember, Altadena, many of those homes were done in the 20s and 30s and 40s for a world that no longer exists from a climate perspective. And so the ability to absorb a deeper understanding as you rebuild it presents itself anew in a profound and we hope impactful way. So I'm concerned about it, but I'm not concerned about our resourcefulness to address it with the most modern standards anywhere in the world. By the way, California leads the nation already in building zoning standards. Our ability now to take it to the next level, to be a model for the rest of the country, presents itself.
There you go. Just like every other thing they call a conspiracy theory, it ends up being true. Because climate change is real, now we get to restructure everything about society to make it so we have ultimate control over your lives. Every Californian should be terrified and do what they can to get these people out of office. And I personally think it'll happen. This catastrophe in Los Angeles was so bad that even some of the most progressive, liberal people can't deny that some real common sense governance is needed. And while the regular people who were affected by this fire aren't going to wait 3 to 5 years to be able to rebuild, they're going to move. The ultra wealthy people in Malibu and the Palisades are going to want their houses back. And they're going to pose a resistance funded by infinite money to get these people out of office. Kamala Harris, finished. Hakeem Jeffries, finished. Gavin Newsom, finished. Every single person who might have been a leader for the Democrat Party has been humiliated. And now the party's so desperate that they're trying to anoint AOC as their next presidential candidate. If they do that and her radical woke socialist ideology becomes the foundation of the Democrat Party, they are going to lose elections for like the next 30 years. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a video. And I will see you guys in the next one.